I was able to stack up 50,692 points for open arc probes during the prospecting probes event on Riven Tides. Now for your equipment, I'd recommend bringing in a hole cracker with at least 3 stacks of ammo just because of how much arc threat there is on this map, and then any primary that you like for this challenge. Outside of that, adrenaline shots are great. You're going to want to bring plenty. I also recommend a snap hook and zip lines just to help out. Now, the Prospecting Probes event is one of my favorite events in the game, and I'm going to walk y'all through why it's so good and why I think a lot of players are sleeping on it. But first, let's cover why this is good for the trial all of a sudden this season. Up until literally this week, the Open Arc Probes challenge was only really done during electromagnetic storms because you could get a high volume of downed arc probes, and the standing arc probes only counted as one search, even if you looked in all 3 of the containers. This week, that has changed, and now you get 667 points for each container that you loot, which means that one standing arc probe is now worth 2,000 points. This makes the Prospecting Probes event a lot more valuable than the Electromagnetic Storm arc probes runs that we've done in the past. Now, if you've never done this event before, or you've not paid a ton of attention to how it works, you're definitely going to want a full match, so make sure that when you queue in, you're ensuring that you're departing before 45 seconds on your matchmaking timer. If your matchmaking timer goes beyond 45 seconds, you're going to join in progress, so I recommend canceling your search and requeuing once you hit that 45-second mark, and you will ensure that you get a full match every time as long as you depart before 45 seconds. Now, the reason the full match is so important for this is because the probes are going to come down from the sky roughly 1 minute into the match starting, and then when a probe lands on the ground, it will only stay there for a period of time. I don't know the exact time, but it's about 3 to 5 minutes. And then if nobody has started a breach on that probe, it will fly away and those points will be lost.
Me too.
This means it's uber important to be able to chase down all those probes before they're able to fly away and you lose those trials points. Now, the trick to this event is that the probes are going to spawn randomly throughout the game. While I'm going to provide you with every probe spawn location that I used, it will not necessarily cover every single possible probe spawn, though it will be most, but the order by which the probes come in are going to change every single game. So even if you know where all the probe spawns are going to be, you cannot predict which probes are going to come in first and which ones will come in last. So you do need to be able to be agile moving around the map at all times, just to ensure that you're able to reach those probes to keep them on the map and stack up your points. Now, something unique to this specific event is that when you start to breach a standing probe, there is a chance that that probe is going to be what I'm calling a guarded probe. Once you start the breach, look into the sky, and if you see 2 smoke trails flying in on top of you, that means you have a guarded probe, and you're going to have to deal with 2 waves of enemies because of you starting that breach. Now, the waves of enemies is only 1 Hornet and 1 Wasp in 2 separate waves, so it's not terrible to take care of. But you need to remember that once you've started the breach on the probe, it's going to emit that noise, which will attract other enemies to your location. As long as that probe is continuing to make that noise, you will continue to bring enemies to you, and you can attract enemies anywhere from about 75 meters out towards the probe location, so it can make it very, very dangerous to let that noise continue to emit. What I recommend that you do is when you breach the probe, even if it's guarded, you finish the breach before you break off to fight the enemies that have spawned on you. In most cases, the first wave of enemies will spawn roughly about halfway through your breach, and then will kind of float there trying to find you or trying to get an angle on you before it actually attacks. So you have just enough time to finish the breach, and then you use the probe for cover, and then use the hole cracker to take them out. This will ensure that the noise is then stopped and you're not aggroing other enemies to you, and you only need to worry about the guarded enemies that are protecting that probe. Now, another unique aspect to the standing probes is they will not actually appear on your map. The downed probes, once you're within about 50 meters of them, will actually appear on the map. So you can literally just use your map to tell where those ones are. But the standing probes do not do that. So you really have to pay attention when you're running around to figure out where those standing probes are. Because once they've been breached, there is no longer a noise that's emitting and no longer a light on top of them. So it can make it very, very easy to just walk right past one if you're not sure where they are. Now, in terms of how long it takes for the probe to fly off of the map, I can't say for sure, but what I can tell you is that the lights on top of the probe are the indicator for where the probe is at in terms of its return to orbit. Once a probe lands, it will blink a blue light when it's just essentially there and waiting to be breached. It will transition to a yellow blinking light when it's getting ready to start to take off, and then a flashing red light once it's within 10 to 15 seconds of leaving the map. If you see an arc probe that's flashing red, you need to sprint to it as fast as possible and try and start the breach. As long as you have started the breach, the probe will never fly away, so you can literally just get to it, start the breach, then just break off and fight with other enemies if you happen to bring those with you, and just deal with that as you go. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned how much I love this event, and I want to explain why I think it's so valuable. One of my biggest struggles with Arc Raiders is just how much RNG is involved in everything. From how many containers that spawn on the map to what items you find in containers, it can be a crapshoot in terms of what you're getting when you're looting. With the Arc probes, you have a very strict set of items that are going to be found inside of them, and those items, even if you don't need them to craft or anything for yourself, will actually stack up to be a ton of money. In almost every container, when you search an arc probe, you're going to get a motion core and arc circuitry. Both the motion cores and arc circuitry will sell for 5,000 a stack, which makes it very, very easy to stack up a ton of coins and sell it off at the end of the raid. Because of how consistent the probe loot is, you can easily sell off 100,000 space coins worth of loot if you're pulling in all of that circuitry and those motion cores as you go. On top of that, if you're pressed for the basic materials like chemicals, rubber parts, metal parts, and things like that, these probes have a chance of spawning the Arc Synthetic Resin, the Arc Flex Rubber, the Arc Performance Steel, and the Arc Thermal Lining, all of which salvage and recycle down into those basic components. So you can also farm up a ton of basic components while you're looting these probes. Additionally, while somewhat rare, you can also get advanced electrical components out of the probes. Obviously, the advanced electrical components are used in a lot of different things, so just having a ton of those to spare is really nice. But if you're stocked up on what you need to craft those, the benefit is that a single stack of those will sell for 8,725 coins, which means that if you're able to farm up a bunch of that, you can even sell higher than just with the motion cores and the arc circuitry. All combined, the Arc Pros event gives an immense amount of value for both your potential in terms of space coins and your potential just in terms of looting critical items that you need for crafting. Even if you're not selling motion cores, crafting the hole cracker rounds requires them, so it's a very, very quick and easy way to farm up a good storage of motion cores. Now, beyond the probes itself, obviously, Riven Tides comes with its fair share of things that you need to deal with. There are a lot of flying arc that are very, very prone to aggroing, even if they're further away than you might expect. The hole cracker is great at dealing with those enemies, and I recommend leaning on that to take them out. If you can, I recommend bringing in a couple of wolf packs, as there are the rocketeers and the vaporizers around the map, and you might find yourself in a spot where using those is going to be super helpful for taking those flyers out, so you're able to loot a probe and get on with the rest of the run. Lastly, the turbines can really create a bit of an issue for getting to a specific probe, depending on where they land at the back end of the round. Now, in general, as far as I can tell, you're able to breach a probe and loot a probe within a close radius of a turbine, and it won't cause it to aggro like the other enemies. The noise from the probe doesn't seem to aggro it, so you can do that, but you just need to watch out for the mines that are going to be scattered around the probe and make sure that you clear those out before you go for the breach. Now, beyond that, there isn't a ton more to this challenge. It's really cool that they enabled the Prospecting Pros event to be a valuable way to do this challenge, and it makes it a whole lot easier than trying to run an expert route during an electromagnetic storm. Once you've stacked up enough points and you're happy with your score, head back to Speranza, collect any loot if you haven't already, and watch your score fly up the leaderboard. That's going to be it for me today, y'all. Thanks for watching.